Hello, so this video is to give you some information and walk you through the presentation 3 for English 165. So we do 3 presentations in this class. Our first one is an informative instructional presentation. Our second presentation is a research-based presentation. And this third presentation is a research and synthesis style presentation. So our goal here with the third presentation is to not only inform, not only to research, but to take those components and combine them and present solutions to a problem. So for this presentation, like the other two, I wanted it to be work relevant, career relevant. I wanted you to research and learn about something that may impact you in the future. This may also be an area of concern for you currently, or it may be something that you could bring up in an interview, or something that you could touch on or think about in your own field, your own career. So for this final presentation, you're going to select a common workplace issue to research. And through your presentation, you're going to do several things. You're going to need to identify the issue and present factual, research-based information about this issue. You can bring in your own personal connections as well if you have them, but your information has to be research-based. With that, you also are going to have to provide MLA citations and show where you got this research. From there, you're going to discuss the history and the relevance of this issue. Is your issue something that's been going on for quite some time in the professional world, or is this a more contemporary current issue? You want to discuss the relevance not only to your own field, to yourself, but also to other potential fields. Because remember, in our class, we're going to have people who are involved in a variety of different programs who are looking at a variety of different fields. The next thing you'll need to do in your presentation is discuss a well-known case or example of this issue in the real world. So if I was researching maybe hiring veterans, which is something that companies are encouraged to do, of course, maybe I would want to highlight a discrimination case or a discrimination lawsuit connected to that topic. But you need to show us the real world implication or show us a real world example of this issue so that we can kind of see not only the history and the relevance of it, but that it does exist in the real world. From there, I'd like you to discuss any possible business ethical connections or ethical dilemmas that might be connected to that. What I mean by that is, does your issue bring up ethical or moral problems beyond even just the business world? If you want to bring up any ethical issues that this may bring up for people personally as well as professionally, that could be really interesting. I'd like you to think about addressing past as well as current ways that that issue has been addressed or been discussed, maybe in different professional areas, in different legal areas, even. So, do some research on kind of the history of this issue, the legal side of this issue, any ideas or ways it has been addressed or discussed in contemporary settings. And then I'd like you to think about some possible solutions to your problem. So, after you've done all of this research and you've identified the issue and you've looked at a famous example of this issue and you've addressed previous and current methods of addressing the issue, I'd like you to propose additional solutions or ways to address the problem. And I'd like you to think about that both from an employer standpoint and an employee standpoint. So, let's say you're researching employee burnout. And at the end of your presentation, you want to talk about some different ways that employees can prevent employee burnout, prevent themselves from feeling exhausted by the work. But you might also need to think about, if I were an employer, how would I help my employees? What are some real, tangible ways that businesses can prevent employee burnout? So all of those components need to be present in your presentation, and that's a lot of information. I want you to think about your structure and your organization because there is so much here. The order here is kind of how I would move through this: identifying the issue, presenting some information about it, presenting the history of it, examples of it, moving into the ethical side of it, and then the solution side of the problem. So that's how I would move through this. Presenting you here with a bunch of different topics, y'all, so many things to think about. I would encourage you to think towards your future field, or even look at your current field if you're working currently or involved in specific programs. And I want you to think about problems that you may encounter or problems that you've already encountered. Make it personal. Build a connection here. Again, the idea with this presentation is to help you better understand the business world that you are going into, and possibly to think about ways to solve problems in that business world. So, lots of ideas here. Employee burnout, which is one that I mentioned, executive pay. So, looking at how like the higher ups in certain companies make so much more money than the people who are at the managerial or the day worker level. I've got several things here about like green or sustainability. So, if you're interested in environmental concerns, I've got stuff about discrimination here, workplace safety. I've got some other things like about accommodations, disability, religious accommodations, all kinds of different things here. Social media in the workplace, drug screening in the workplace. I mentioned hiring veterans, HIPAA in the workplace, especially if you're interested in the medical field, workplace bias, telecommuting. So there's a ton of different ideas here. And this is not a complete list of the problems that you might encounter in the workforce. So if you're researching and you see something that kind of sparks your interest, let me know. Let's see if we can find enough information about that topic to help you do your presentation. So again, you're not limited to this list per se. Your required elements for this presentation, it is a 6 to 8 minute oral presentation. So each of our presentations has gotten a little bit longer because each presentation requires a bit more information. Building one on top of each other, it's scaffolding, okay? So that's how we get to these longer presentations. So when you look back up, y'all, this is a lot of information to include in a presentation, but 6 to 8 minutes that's a big old chunk of time. So you do need to be thinking about how to fill that time in a meaningful and purposeful way. You need to have a PowerPoint presentation, at least 5 to 8 slides, with MLA formatting, MLA citations, both for your in-text and your photos, and also an MLA slide at the very end. You need to make sure that your speech includes organizers, transitions. You want your presentation to be visually interesting. You can't do anything about weapons, tobacco, alcohol, drugs, animals, and children. Like you can't use them in your presentation as visual aids. Each student needs to pick a different topic as well. We don't want to sit through, 10 presentations about the same topic. So make sure that you are signing up for your topic on the discussion board. If you see that somebody else has already selected your topic, then you'll need to pick something else. So priority goes to the first person who posts. If for some reason we get to the end and we have multiple people presenting on the same topic, I will look to see who had it claimed on the discussion board, and they are going to be kind of allowed to have the credit for that, and the other people will lose points for duplicating. So you need to make sure that we aren't duplicating information. Make sure you're using your MLA formatting. Again, I have an entire folder on D2L about MLA formatting. You need to make sure your pictures, statistics, anything that's a very specific information you need to make sure you have it credited in MLA format. There's, like I said, tons of stuff on D2L. The Purdue OWL website's wonderful. Use things like Citation Machine, Chegg has a great service as well. And guys, we have the Learning Center too. Like, go to the Learning Center and get some help. If you go to the Learning Center and get some help, and you either bring me back a little note from them, or you CC me on the email that you send them, I'll give you some bonus points as well. So make use of that resource. The presentation is going to be graded with the rubric that's posted on D2L, so have a look at that. The big thing, y'all, this is our final presentation. This is our final exam, really, for the class. Make sure you are practicing, all right? You don't want to throw this together the day of and just hope it works out. Get your presentation done a little bit ahead of time. Be running through it. Be practicing. When I'm driving in the car, I'm heading to work, or I'm going somewhere, I'm always running through stuff like that in my head. If I have to give a lecture at a class, or if I am kind of coming up with an assignment, I'm always working through that in my head. So you want to make sure that you're practicing either, in front of your computer, in front of the mirror. Make your family members listen, okay? Make your family members be your audience, but be practicing your presentation and time yourself while you do it. Again, that 6 to 8 minute window is where we need to be for this presentation. I'm going to post a sample presentation for you with kind of some ideas on different approaches that you could do. So feel free to look at that, and then we will have some work time in class as well.